Nakamura. My name is Sage Blake. I'm a wanderer, storyteller, artist and mature, and I'm ashamed that it's taken so long for me to actually finish this. The truth of the matter is several-fold in that respect. First of which being, I've done this before. Twice. And at this point, I've just given up. Because the first time I recorded this, I ran into issues capturing the game, and the file is corrupted of not just the game, but also my commentary. And the second time I did this, just everything was going fine, both things recorded, but my commentary got so completely and utterly garbled and mixed with the actual game volume that I decided, you know what, fuck it, I give up. And as opposed to doing all this a third time, and yeah, I could do it a third time and do all of the commentary over again, because I'm just a nice person like that. This game has tried my patience. Nothing against it, just I like this game, but the circumstances surrounding this final recording for this game have been utter hell. Because not only have I had 2, maybe even 3 failed recordings, but I also ran into a mental health issue that prevented me from going back to this, and I had to take a bit of a break, and yeah. So as a way to welcome me back, let's cut out the most annoying fight in the game. Because he only deserves the best. And in fact, we're going to be cutting out the next several fights because, honestly, we've seen them already, and they're nothing new, and they're also within, like, 3 arenas. Maybe even 4, if I'm not counting correctly. They're all really simple, they're all really basic, and in some of these cases, they're just very tedious, and I don't want to play them. Doc Robot, especially because it's Doc Robot. Like, fucking Christ. It's bad enough that we have to fight him once in the story, and once in another arena, but having to fight him 3 times in arenas? No! That's egregious, unwelcome, and most importantly, it wastes my time. On the bright side, though, Blade Man here is a much more interesting fight to look at, because his patterns are much more unpredictable, and generally lead to some very reckless plays from me, so that's at least something to look at. Sparky, on the other hand, he is a very basic boss. Relatively easy, it goes down like 7 or 8 shotguns. The only reason why I'm showing this specific fight is because while I was using the shotgun, for whatever reason, the last hit just didn't connect. Maybe I ended up at the end of his cycle for the attack, and as a result, he went into pinch mode. But as you can see right there, he just grew immune to it temporarily, and at that point, I decided, yeah, let's not waste any more chip power, and just fell him with the Buster. Simple as that. We're also gonna be skipping this fight, because much as I'd love to show off that I can take down the Wafer Wagon without blinking, it's an incredibly long fight, and it's not interesting to look at. So, without further ado, 2, 1, boop! And one last time, just for the audience. Oh wait, I actually didn't cut this one out. Oops. I'm at least showing this off, I guess, just because, hey, you can feasibly do this without spamming all the fire that I usually do. And it's not that hard, honestly. It's just long. It's meant to waste your time, it's meant to have you make a bunch of hiccups and have this guy slowly chip you down, like he almost did here. If it weren't for the fact that I had double jump, that blow right there probably would have been fatal, if not gotten me much closer to fatal. Fortunately though, this particular footage is composite. So while you will be seeing me get a Healy item right here, just as a note, this particular run ended at this boss fight. When we cut back, my health is different. Believe it or not, this took like 5 or 6 attempts just to get back to this guy again, because I kept dying on either the wafer wagon or otherwise Doc robots, and it was just not engaging to look at, not entertaining. In total, the footage that you're seeing right now is maybe 40 minutes long. In terms of how long I spent recording it, 2 or 3 hours. And that's excluding the failed recordings, which will effectively double, maybe triple my time. Oh, thank God. A 1-up. Just what I needed. Alistair here is a fairly simple boss. If you're careful, you can even halve the amount of saber that you use just to chip him down by switching to the buster for every second or 4th hit. Just because it's a little easier to time. For this phase, if you don't want to get hit, you'll need to climb the ladder and just guide him around in figure 8. It's simple to avoid, simple to gimmick with, and then you can essentially buster spam him in this phase, and he's dead. Simple. Basketball, on the other hand, well, I can't help but using the saber against basketball. Mostly because of the way that she bounces all over the place, it's just more comfortable for me to use a weapon that hits around me as opposed to something that shoots straight forward. Especially with this attack right here, because the saber, since I have the shot blocker, will erase the rocks that it throws up. Makes it less of a worry to worry about. Psionic Man. Ugh. I lost another run to Psionic Man, leading to another 2 or 3 additional attempts that have been cut out. You'll see the tail end of this run, well, of the failed run on the right side here. It came really down to the wire, and while I was somewhat proud of the show that I did there, in the end of it, it came down to a stupid error. I didn't dodge the right way, and I suffered. That's why I ended up putting it down. This particular attack is really annoying to dodge. I guess you need to just gimmick with the air slide just so you can avoid the lasers? I honestly don't know. Of course, you could also use the double jump, but I'm trying to minimize the use of it whenever possible for these boss fights. Yes, I do admit I have the double jump. I have it equipped. And I do use it on occasions. I don't use it all the time because, well, it's not as engaging to look at. Speaking of not engaging to look at, I'm cutting down the time on this because it's a time waster. It's a really easy attack to dodge. All you need to do is pay attention, and other than that, just position yourself in the right place. I'd also like to point out that in this last phase of the fight here, it's a little tricky to hit Psionic Man whenever he has one of those turrets falling around. Maybe if you had the saber, you would have a bit of an easier time, and especially so if you have Flame Saber or something. I want to say he's a little more vulnerable to Psionic Chip, but even then, I don't want to risk it. Especially since some of the other fights in here require Psionic Chip a little more. Well, one of them at least. This guy, however, I like fighting Buster only. It's a really simple fight, and it doesn't really take up much of your time. If you want to accelerate the fight really quickly, then use the fire chip, by all means. But honestly, you don't really need it. All you need is some decent timing with the Buster, and making sure to hit down the blocks as the boss tries to grab them up. When we get to the second half of the fight, it's more of a matter of making sure that you're staying in the middle third of the screen. If you're too high up, then it's going to be hard to dodge, and you might risk getting off screen. If you get too close to the bottom, then you might fall into the eternal abyss below and kill yourself. The laser attack that it's been using actually is affected by the platforms that are being raised. So if you end up in a bad position, try to gimmick with your position a bit better, and you should be able to dodge the angles set with the laser. Cloud Devil here can easily be cheesed by using the Ice Chip. The shots that you can throw out with that can bounce around the walls, and if you angle it correctly on some of these attacks, it can shoot up and hit him directly. Remember, the ice bounces at a 45-degree angle if you turn it upward. So you need to gimmick with your positioning a little bit, or otherwise shoot closer to the wall than you might want. On the bright side, though, its patterns are relatively simple, and when you get into the second half of the fight, there's a sweet spot that you can nestle yourself into to chip the boss down a little faster using the ice chip again. Of course, you're not going to be seeing me gimmick with the ice chip here quite yet, because I couldn't remember its weakness while I was fighting it around this point. Also, mid-air controls are really slippery for the times in which you end up having to deal with it here. Really frustrating, but eventually I got it down. And that sweet spot I was talking about. It's a little... from about mid-screen, go a little lesser, maybe a full 0, a 0.5, and hug the left or right wall, and you should be able to just spam straight shots of the ice chip to down this boss quickly. If you don't want to use chips, then fine, you can still exploit that same spot using the same buster. I do not recommend getting in close, at all, because this guy just throws around all types of different shots, and it's going to end up forcing you into a position where you're going to get hit. Here, I can actually show off the sweet spot a little better. The next boss, Duo, I didn't learn this until maybe like the second or third time I fought Duo. But Duo is weak to the psionic chip. Weird, but it works. If you want to get this fight out of the way fast, use that chip. Otherwise, you're going to have to deal with the fiddly 1 damage that pretty much all of your attacks will deal. At that, the Saber is also your friend, especially if you have the Shot Eraser, because it can take out the 2 phases that use star attacks relatively faster and safer than the standard buster. It's up to you if you want to use them though. Otherwise, you're perfectly fine just trying to dodge his attacks and make the best of the situation. The Saber also clears out the shot zone from this attack, so make sure to use it to make a bit of a pocket that you can nestle yourself into and avoid damage. Provided you're playing it careful and only attacking when you need to, you shouldn't suffer. Oh, that's a piddly power-up. I think I'm gonna need some help with this one. Alright, so the next 4 or 5 boss fights, yeah, 4, sorry, are against Strava, and it's the basic fights against Strava. These aren't bad, but they can be a bit of a struggle if you, well, haven't gotten the practice at these guys. As of when I recorded this, I did not do any additional practice, like with Bloodstained or any type of 2D platform or anything like that. I pretty much decided, you know what, I want to get this out of the way, and I want to get it out of the way immediately. So, 2.5-hour recording yet again. Ugh. Up and down is relatively simple. Again, use the Saber to take out some of these shots, make it a little easier to deal with. Sarada Joe, on that one. I mean, I guess you could use the burst in order to chip him from most angles a little more easily, but other than that, there aren't too many options in terms of chips that are effective, or that I've noticed. I could probably look it up. I would actually highly encourage you to take a look at the MaGMML wiki if you ever feel you need some more information on these boss fights than what I'm doing now. This particular attack can be fairly annoying, but if you position yourself around the middle half of the screen, then you should be okay. You'll get enough time that you can move in between the pedals, maybe get an attack off if you're lucky. For this phase, you can use the Saber to lessen the amount of projectiles, but otherwise, I'd say if you don't want to inflict any direct damage, you don't have to. You can just focus on dodging and moving at that, and wait for the bomb burst. Little fun fact about Sarada's shield attacker here, and I don't show this off until the next time we fight him. Minor spoiler, we do fight him again. And at that, all the other members of Sarada in the Soul Melter difficulty. It's weak to the Cutter Chip. Weird weakness, but if you can position yourself correctly with the basic shot, and I would highly recommend the basic shot for that, just so you save on chip power, then you can deal stupid amounts of damage relatively quickly and efficiently. Of course, if you miss, then it's just gonna bounce off the shield and you're SOL. But little food for thought. Sarada Met, I usually just stick to the Buster whenever possible. I do use the burst whenever he's using that orb attack. This was an accident. I didn't mean to switch to the ult there, but I did. Oops. But other than that, other than the using the Force Spread burst to hit him every so often when he's in weird locations, I end up staying with the Buster whenever he's at a distance, and switch to the Saber whenever he starts popping around. This particular phase you can cheese with the Saber, I've already shown that off earlier in the playthrough, so feel free to do that. Even then though, your attacks mostly are going to be dealing 1 or 2 damage like that, so I'm not 100% sure if he has a chip yet. Maybe the Zap chip, thinking about it, considering the basic attack uses your shields, I think. Something to think about. And here we're going to be showing off some of the repeat fights that occur that is within the Soul Melter difficulty before getting to the actual new fights, starting with Hyper Picketman. Hyper Picketman can easily be felt using the Cutter Chip. Make sure to angle it up, otherwise it's just going to bounce off the machine and do absolutely nothing. If you get a good enough pattern, you can kind of jump forward, fire shot upward, circle back, and then get to a safe spot before he gets ready for his attack. Really simple boss fight, provided you're able to use that chip. Then from there, we've got Yam Man. I won't be ashamed to admit that Yam Man killed me once. On the bright side, I did get my revenge using a whole lot of fire. I want to say he is weak to Fire Chip. I'm not sure what off the top of my head. But at least using the Fire Chip, it creates a whole bunch of situations where I can attack him safely and focus more on dodging. Because Yamato Man has some very, very nutty patterns, and honestly, I need the extra mental capacity just so I can focus on actually tohoing, if that makes sense. The next 2 boss fights are repeats. We're going to be skipping one of the 2 of them, that being the ice variant of this fight. Cloud Devil, I do show off the Ice Chip weakness here, so yeah, that's a thing. And I also show off the ideal tactic that I've been using against him too. As you can see here, bouncing shots off allows you to mess them up. Makes it a little easier for you to focus on dodging, makes the boss fight go a lot faster. You could also chip the fight down especially quickly using the 4-shot spread ice, since if you position it correctly, you can get 2, maybe even 3 hits with a single spend bar. Really, really useful, really, really fast. And the sweet spot on the left side, he's all set. Switch off to conserve chip power, and we get to the next fight. The data backups here are all weak to the Cutter Chip, but I would highly recommend that you use the basic shot to take down Matchman and Horntooth. When it comes down to Sheriff Man, maybe you can get one hit off immediately, but I would recommend using Burst since that pierces his shield. And it also absolutely shreds him compared to any of the other fights. I mean, you could use the Burst against the other fights, but you're better off saving the power up, just in case. Because you never know with boss fights. Sometimes you have an easy time, sometimes you have to run through your entire bar. This time around on Duo, I do show off that psionic weakness that I was talking about partway through the fight. It does take a bit for us to get to that point at all. Until then, I do get whipped over. As you can see here, at that, psionic is also just generally a good choice to use to dodge some of his attacks. The extra float that it puts on your jump is a little disorienting, I will admit that, but if you can get it right, then you'll have a much easier time. What's in the capsule? Ooh, 1-up, perfect. Our next fight, well, fight-sa, is against the entire Sararage. Starting with Chopper. This is a test of attrition. On the bright side, you get a heal every each one of them you take down, but it's only an 8 HP heal, not like full healing. Make sure to dodge attacks, especially since these are the powered-up versions of the Sararage. So, as you'll notice here, the pedal spam that's coming out of Sararajo here is in 2-spread and is a bit tighter to dodge than any of the others. At that, these guys are lobbing shots and firing out a little faster too. The health will always spawn at the middle of the arena, so make sure you're positioned in a good place to get it should you need it. Sarara up and down gets me a bit of a time here. And I also found out something else that's interesting. The shot spread that comes out when he comes out of the ground. You can block it using your saber, fortunately. So make sure to do that, just so you have a little less to think about. Or at least if you have the shot blocker add-on to the saber. This phase sucks, because you can block the bombs with the saber, sure, but you're likely gonna explode yourself in the process. There's just no winning. I ended up having to damage race it this time around, but I do see an instance where you could potentially dodge it if you just do a bunch of jumping. Sarada Met here gets a lot faster, a little more wild with his attacks, and generally it is a slightly harder fight than originally. Especially since on these diving attacks, he throws a whole bunch of shots downward that upward. If you're using the shot blocker saber, you can mitigate that, otherwise good luck. It's gonna come down to a whole lot of counter positions. This attack ends up having a 2-spread, which you can phase through using the saber. If you're very close to him, then you can not only chip him, but also chip down some shots too. Okay, oh, careful with my dodging here. And Sarlamet is almost down. There we go. Now for Shield Attacker. I do show off the Cutter Chip weakness, just as an advanced note. At that, he's also a little more unpredictable with his traveling patterns, so I took a lot of unnecessary damage here. On the bright side, I used a lot less tanks than I originally thought I would. That back attack surprised me the first time I got to this fight, and at that, the second and third times I got to this fight as well. Because I just didn't expect it. I got so used to him doing his standard, "Oh no, my shield is gone, and I must run away!" I didn't expect him to actually defend himself. That additional shot on the belting shield is also upsetting, because I also didn't predict it. But on the bright side, it can be shot erased. Unfortunately, as I mentioned, on the, first failed recording of this, I actually had to spend a few different there's a couple E-tanks just to get through this fight, and on the run in which I got erased by the next boss, Trio, actually, Ununium is the next boss, but I got erased by Trio on a run. That was frustrating. Ugh. But anyways, on one specific run, I essentially burned like 5 E-tanks. Really embarrassing. That's why I'm a little more proud of this particular run, because I keep the E-tank spending a little bit to a minimum, at least until we get to the very last boss. Ununium is very unpredictable and very wild, and while he does take increased damage from the Saber and this shot first attack, I don't know if he has a chip weakness. Maybe Psionic, maybe, I don't know, Electricity? Or it could be Fire, for all I know. It's also important to note that for this particular attack, both the physical version and the holographic version of Ununium can damage you while slamming down. This attack is just an absolute nightmare for me to dodge. I can never seem to predict it correctly, specifically because of the way it wibbles around. As a result, I had to use an E-tank. He's charging up here, and here comes the mean machine attack, as I call it. So this time we've got Angry Sun and Thomas. This ends up shots that spread downward. He has a screen slammer attack like that, and the Sun is just generally annoying somewhere on the screen. For this particular attack, you need to make sure to use the stomp in order to properly dodge it, and position yourself properly. Otherwise, he'll just warp you up into the shot stand basically. Dodge around a bit, because here he'll actually home in on you. A whole bunch of bouncy shots that just go around all over the screen. You cannot shot blocker them, I've tried. But on the bright side, we're finished with it. Leading up to Trio. This particular run of Trio, I found out something somewhat interesting. Duo can actually get tired in this fight. If he suffers too much damage from Trio's attacks, then he will actually short-circuit, shut down for a little bit, and become a sitting duck. Duo doesn't die, however. He just gets tired and has to take about 10 or so seconds to recover. On the bright side, if you're always on the opposite side of Trio, you can always make sure to clock in some damage. Little nuggets that Trio ends up throwing out can easily be taken down by 3 Saber strikes, and you'll need to keep that in mind when you get to the final part of the fight. For this at least, relatively simple. Attack when need be, get behind Duo when need be, and follow Duo's instructions. He knows what he's doing better than you do, unless you've done this fight a few times before, then not so much. Also beware that Duo will try to position himself will try to be like on the opposite position of you. So you'll want to position yourself carefully in order to either pepper Trio's shield and allow Duo to get some damage, or otherwise pepper Trio while Duo occupies Trio's shield. For this attack, you'll want to stay towards the center in order to dodge it more effectively, and watch for the sound cues. When there's a static sound cue, then you'll have to be especially careful because Trio will be reversing direction. And here, Duo gets tired. If I remember correctly, he does this twice during this fight, and I was just genuinely surprised with him. Time for the last phase of the fight. Occupy the enemies so Duo can use attack. If Duo suffers too many hits, then it cancels and you have to go through all of it all over again. On the bright side, though, if you end up taking too much damage in this fight, you can grind up a little bit of HP and weapon power off the little nuggets that he's fighting. Well, that you have to fight. Not much, but it's enough to allow you to siege out the rest of the fight. Duo takes care of Trio. You get the final hit. All set. And now we get into the final fight of this. Now, normally, the name of this final boss wouldn't show up on screen, but since I've beaten it, now you know what it is. GameStop Duck. I don't know why, I don't know what. I laughed the first time I saw this, but honestly, I kinda just expected something silly to be at the end at this rate. GameStop Duck here tries to come off as intimidating at outset before he goes full silly mode. And if you know Birth by Sleep, then you'll know exactly what this guy is imitating. Actually, not necessarily Birth by Sleep, either Birth by Sleep or Kingdom Hearts 3, because the particular boss appears in both of those games. Lingering Will. And GameStop Duck actually does have some of its attacks based off of Lingering Will directly, as well as some semi-original ones that are extrapolations of things that you could do in Birth by Sleep / Kingdom Hearts 3. No matter what you use against this boss, it will take 1 damage. Every single attack except for the screen nuke will deal 1 damage to it. And I think the screen nuke deals only like 3 or 4. Across the board, it's going to be a test of attrition. Are you able to dodge his attacks properly? Are you able to predict what he's going to be doing and when he's going to be doing it? And most importantly, have you been saving E-tanks up to this point? It's almost an inevitability that you're going to have to use at least 1 tank. If you're extremely good, maybe you could do this on a single health bar. Good luck. Like, full blunt, good luck. There's a lot of variety on his attacks here. The Keyblade Glider is really quick and really difficult to dodge, even when you're doing all the air sliding and stomping around that you'd normally be doing. This dive attack here has a rather sudden windup that just leads into its damage immediately, making it pretty tricky to dodge. There's also the shockwave it throws out. It staggers you when it's on the ground. Once you clear its first health bar, then it gains some additional attacks, making it a little more frustrating to deal with, but all in all, it's down to a war of attrition, as I mentioned. This particular attack is very annoying. The shots have homing until they get to about halfway down the screen. Past there, then they'll shoot in a straight line. Keep moving. If you don't keep moving, you won't be able to dodge the attack, and you're going to run into some frustrating moments. This attack requires quite a bit of maneuvering to dodge it properly. And other than that, it's just a matter of being careful. It's a really fun fight, even after you have seen everything. This last attack here is a one-shot, so make sure you're dodging it. Otherwise, you're screwed. He only does it once, though. Past then, just make sure to chip him down, and the fight is over. Voila. There's no fanfare or anything like that when you finally beat this fight. You're just booted out to the teleporter with your prizes, and that's about it. As an additional note, for both of these 2 arenas that have been shown off in this video, you get music discs. I believe 3 apiece? So, yeah, good luck. There is a distinct possibility in the future that I might, like, do some custom battles in the future. Essentially, how the custom battles work is you can load up as many or as few bosses as you want, and depending on the amount of bosses you throw in and the relative difficulties of those bosses, the power-ups in the chamber will change and increase in potency. There is, however, one boss in this game that is impossible for you to beat. 100%. And you never even get a chance to fight him. Mega Man. You can not only fight him in that custom battle arena, but also in the practice arena, too. And should you ever want to practice any of these fights, well, you'll need to fight them first in order to unlock them in the appropriate place. But otherwise, drop by the dojo in Mega City. There you'll find Yamato Man and his teleporter, and you can fight any of the bosses in a sort of practice mode using that teleporter. And it's essentially just a single bout. Once you win, that's it, and move about your day. There's exactly one boss here, again, Mega Man, that you cannot fight, and attempting to fight him will actually just straight up result in your death, and that's it. But yeah, with that, I can officially say that this project is complete. There isn't any special reward for 100% completion. In MaGMML 1 and MaGMML 2, you unlock a cheat mode that itself allows you to break the game even further. But other than that, there's nothing else. So, with all that settled, consider this the end of the first LP. Finally. Tune in next week when we take into Bloodstained, and that's going to be interesting and a half. Until then, till again, talakit na.